The dying promise, the distress beacon, had been calling for 3 days before the relentless hope finally reached the frozen moon. Commander Elena Vasquez stood at the bridge window and watched the ice fields stretch endlessly beneath them. Nothing should have survived down there. The temperature was far below anything most species could handle. Yet the beacon kept pulsing. Someone was still alive. Elena ordered her pilot to take them down. The ship groaned as it pushed through the thin atmosphere and landed near the wreckage of an alien vessel. The crashed ship was unlike anything Elena had seen before. It was long and curved like a sleeping beast, and its hull was torn open from impact. Smoke still rose from the wounds in its metal skin. She took 2 crew members with her. They walked through the snow with their weapons ready. The wind cut through their suits and made every step feel heavy. When they reached the ship, they found the entrance had been ripped apart. Something had tried very hard to get inside, or to get out. The interior was dark and cold. Emergency lights flickered in red pulses that made shadows jump and twist. Bodies lay scattered in the corridors. They were large creatures covered in thick fur. Some silver, some gray. All of them were dead. Their wounds were strange. Not from the crash. Something had hunted them. Elena moved deeper into the ship. She followed a sound, a low whimpering that echoed through the metal halls. It led her to what looked like a cargo hold. And there she found her. The creature was massive. Even lying broken on the floor, she was twice the size of Elena. Her fur was silver, but now it was matted with violet blood that pooled beneath her. She looked like a wolf, but not quite. Her eyes were too intelligent. Her paws had fingers that could grip and hold. She was dying. That much was clear. But she was not alone. Beneath her shattered body, 3 small shapes huddled together. Cubs. They were tiny compared to their mother. Their eyes were wide with fear, and they pressed themselves against her cooling fur as if hoping she might still protect them. The dying creature saw Elena. She lifted her head with great effort. A device on her throat sparked and crackled, and then a voice emerged. Broken, translated, but understandable. "You are human," Elena lowered her weapon. She nodded slowly. The creature tried to move, but her body would not obey. Blood dripped from her mouth as she spoke again. "I am Kelra, Alpha of the Valoran. We fled the Hollow, the swarm that consumes all thinking things. They found us. They always find us." Elena knelt beside her. She could see the wounds now, deep gashes that no medicine could fix. This creature had minutes left. Maybe less. Kelra turned her fading amber eyes to the cubs beneath her. "My children, Thresh, Vora, and the small one, Pip. They are too young. They cannot hunt. They cannot fight. They cannot survive this world alone." Elena felt something twist in her chest. She had lost a daughter once, a little girl taken by a plague on a distant colony. The grief had never left her. It lived in her bones like a second skeleton. "I watched your kind," said Kelra. "Humans, you are soft. You have no claws, no fangs, no venom. Yet you endure. You raise young that are not your blood. You fight for those who cannot fight." She reached out with one trembling paw and pressed it against Elena's hand. Her touch was cold, but her eyes burned with desperate hope. "Take care of my cubs, human. They cannot survive this world alone." Elena looked at the 3 small creatures. They stared back at her with eyes that held too much fear for one so young. She thought of her daughter. She thought of the empty years that followed. She thought of every night she had wished for a second chance. She closed her hand around Kelra's paw. "I will protect them. I swear it." Something like peace washed over Kelra's face. Her breathing slowed. Her eyes began to close. "Thank you, human. You have given a dying mother her only comfort." And then she was gone. Elena stayed there for a long moment. The cubs began to cry. Small broken sounds that filled the cold ship with sorrow. She reached down and gathered them gently in her arms. They were warm despite everything. They were alive. She carried them out of the wreckage and into the snow. Behind her, the ship sat like a tomb. Above her, the stars watched in silence. She had made a promise to a dying mother. Now she had to find a way to keep it. The first week was a disaster. Elena had brought the cubs aboard the Relentless Hope, thinking the hardest part was over. She was wrong. The hardest part had just begun. The Valoran cubs were not like human children. They were born predators. Even at their young age, they had claws that could slice through metal and teeth that dripped with mild venom. When the ship's cook tried to bring them food, Thresh lunged at him and nearly took off his hand. When the engineer walked past their makeshift den too quickly, Vora pounced and left deep scratches across his leg. The crew was not happy. Marcus the engineer came to Elena on the third day. His leg was bandaged and his face was hard with anger. "Commander, we need to talk about those things. They are not things," Elena said. "They are children. They are predators," Marcus shot back. "They could kill one of us in our sleep. They already attacked 2 crew members. We should space them before they cause real damage." Elena stood up from her chair. She was not a tall woman, but in that moment, she seemed to fill the entire room. "I made a promise, Marcus. Those cubs lost their mother. They lost their entire world. They are scared and confused, and they are lashing out because that is all they know how to do. I will not abandon them because they are difficult." Marcus held her gaze for a long moment. Then, he looked away. "Fine. But when someone dies, don't say, 'I didn't warn you.'" He left. Elena sat back down and rubbed her temples. She knew he had a point. The cubs were dangerous. But she also knew something Marcus did not understand. Fear could be unlearned. Trust could be built. It just took time. She converted a cargo bay into a proper den. She lined it with blankets and soft materials. She dimmed the lights to match the darkness the cubs preferred. She researched Valoran biology through broken alien databases and learned what they ate and how they slept and what sounds meant comfort and what sounds meant threat. Slowly things began to change. Thresh was the largest cub and the most aggressive. But Elena noticed he only attacked when startled. So she taught the crew to announce themselves before entering the cargo bay, to move slowly, to speak softly. Within 2 weeks, Thresh stopped lunging. Within a month, he began to approach Elena on his own. Vora was the middle cub. She was clever and curious, and she loved to explore. Elena gave her puzzles to solve and objects to investigate. She watched as Vora figured out how to open containers and press buttons and even operate simple door controls. This one would be trouble someday, but good trouble. Pip was the smallest. The runt. He barely ate. He barely moved. He just lay in the corner of the den and stared at nothing with hollow eyes. Elena worried about him most of all. In the second week, Pip stopped eating entirely. The ship's medic Chun examined him and shook her head. "He's giving up, Commander. Some animals do that when they lose their mothers. They just stop trying to live." Elena refused to accept that. She stayed with Pip for 3 days straight. She did not sleep. She barely ate. She held him against her chest and talked to him constantly. She told him about Earth, about the blue oceans and the green forests and the way sunlight felt on human skin. She told him about her daughter, about the songs she used to sing and the games they used to play. She did not know if Pip understood her words, but she hoped he understood her meaning. "You are not alone. Someone is here. Someone cares." On the third night, Pip finally ate. Just a little. But it was enough. Chun watched from the doorway. She had tears in her eyes. The crew watched too. Something shifted in them. They saw this small human woman pouring everything she had into keeping a tiny alien creature alive. They saw her refuse to give up when giving up would have been so easy. Marcus came back on the 4th week. His leg had healed. His face had softened. "What do you need?" Commander Elena looked up at him. She was exhausted. Dark circles ringed her eyes. But she was smiling. "I need help building a better feeding system. And maybe some toys. Do we have anything they could play with?" Marcus nodded slowly. A small smile tugged at his lips. "I think I can figure something out." The cubs were still dangerous. They were still wild and unpredictable and alien. But they were also children who had lost everything. And this crew of humans was starting to understand what that meant. They were starting to become a pack. 6 months had passed since Elena pulled the cubs from that frozen wreckage. They had grown fast. Too fast. Thresh now stood as tall as Elena's waist. His silver fur had thickened, and his claws had lengthened into curved blades that clicked against the metal floors when he walked. Vora had become sleek and quick. She could run from one end of the ship to the other in seconds, and her golden eyes missed nothing. Even Pip had grown. He was still the smallest, but he was no longer the fragile thing that had almost died in Elena's arms. He had muscle now. He had strength. And he had something else too. A bond with Elena that went deeper than words. The relentless hope had been traveling toward a distant refueling station. The journey was long and boring, and the crew had fallen into comfortable routines. Elena trained with the cubs every day. She taught them hand signals and voice commands. She taught them to control their instincts, to wait, to think, to trust. Then everything changed. It happened in the middle of the night cycle. Elena was sleeping in her quarters when a sound woke her. A howl, long and high and filled with pure terror. It came from the cargo bay where the cubs slept. She ran. When she reached the bay, she found all 3 cubs pressed against the far wall. Their fur stood on end. Their teeth were bared. But they were not growling in anger. They were shaking in fear. "What's wrong?" Elena asked. "What is it?" Thresh turned to her. His amber eyes were wide. He spoke in broken human words that he had been learning over the months. "It comes. The dark that eats. The hollow." Elena felt ice spread through her veins. She had heard the cubs speak of the hollow before. The swarm that had destroyed their world. The enemy that consumed all thinking things. She had hoped they would never encounter it. She had been foolish. The ship's alarms began to scream. Elena ran to the bridge. Her crew was already there. Chun pointed at the sensor display with a trembling hand. "Commander, something is on the hull." "A lot of somethings." Elena looked at the display. Dozens of small shapes were crawling across the outside of their ship. They moved like insects, but they were not insects. They were scouts. Hollow scouts. And they were looking for a way inside. "All hands battle stations," Elena ordered. "Seal all exterior airlocks. I want weapons ready at every checkpoint." The next 8 hours were the longest of Elena's life. The Hollow Scouts were small, but they were relentless. They found every weakness in the hull, every crack, every seam. They chewed through metal like it was paper. The crew fought them at every breach. They fired weapons and swung tools and used their own bodies to block doorways. Elena was everywhere. She welded blast doors shut with her own hands. She vented atmosphere in targeted sections to flush out the scouts that got through. She made choices that risked everything because the alternative was losing everything. At one point, a cluster of scouts broke through into the main corridor. Elena stood between them and the cargo bay where the cubs hid. She had a plasma torch in one hand and a metal pipe in the other. She was not a soldier. She was a salvage commander. But in that moment, she fought like something else entirely. The scouts came at her in waves. She burned them. She crushed them. She kicked them against walls and stomped them beneath her boots. Violet ichor splattered across her suit. Her arms screamed with exhaustion. But she did not stop. She could not stop. Her children were behind her. When the last scout fell, Elena collapsed against the wall. Her breath came in ragged gasps. Her hands were shaking. Blood dripped from a dozen small wounds where the scouts had bitten her. The cargo bay door opened. Thresh emerged. He was nearly as tall as her now. His silver fur was bristled and his muscles were tense. He walked to her slowly and pressed his large body against her legs. Not in fear, in solidarity. "You fight like Pack, Mother," he said quietly. Like Alpha. Elena reached down and rested her hand on his head. She could feel his heart beating fast beneath her palm. "We are Pack," she whispered. "Pack protects Pack." Behind Thresh, the other cubs emerged. Vora pressed against Elena's other side. Pip crawled into her lap, despite being far too big for it now. They surrounded her with warmth and weight and the simple, powerful truth of family. The Hollow Scouts were dead. The ship had survived. But Elena knew this was only the beginning. The Hollow had found them. And the Hollow never stopped hunting. She looked down at her cubs. At the children she had promised to protect. She made a silent vow in that moment. She would fight the darkness that ate worlds. She would stand against the swarm that consumed all thinking things. She was human. She was soft and clawless and small. But she was also a mother. And mothers did not abandon their children to monsters. The relentless hope limped through space like a wounded animal. The battle with the Hollow Scouts had cost them dearly. Their secondary engine was destroyed. Half their sensors were offline. The hull was scarred with dozens of patches where breaches had been sealed with desperate welds and emergency foam. Elena guided them toward a neutral station where they could make repairs. It would take weeks to reach at their current speed, but they had no other choice. They never made it. On the 12th day, 3 ships appeared on their damaged sensors. They were large and curved in ways that made Elena's heart skip. She recognized the design. It was the same as the crashed ship where she had found Calra and the cubs. Valeran ships. The communication came through static and broken frequencies. A deep voice spoke in the alien language, first then switched to translated human words. "Human vessel. You carry Valeran young. We wish to speak. We mean no harm." Elena looked at her crew. They were exhausted and injured and suspicious. But they were also curious. She opened the channel. "This is Commander Elena Vasquez of the Relentless Hope. We will hear you." The Valeran ships escorted them to a larger vessel that served as a mobile command center. Elena brought the cubs with her when she boarded. She would not leave them alone. Not now. Not ever. The interior of the Valeran ship was dark and warm. It smelled of earth and fur and something ancient. Elena walked through corridors that were built for creatures much larger than her. The cubs stayed close. Their bodies were tense. They had never met others of their kind. The elders waited in a great chamber at the ship's heart. There were 5 of them. Massive Valeran whose fur had turned gray with age. Their bodies were covered in scars. Their eyes held the weight of countless losses. They were the survivors. The scattered remnants of a species that had once ruled 100 worlds. Elena stood before them with her cubs at her sides. She felt very small. Very human. The oldest elder rose. He was blind. Thick scars crossed his eyes where something had clawed away his sight long ago. But he moved with certainty. He approached the cubs and breathed in their scent. "Calra's bloodline," he said softly. "The children of the Silver Alpha. We thought her line was lost. Their mother died protecting them, Elena said. She asked me to take care of them. I gave her my word. The elder turned his blind gaze toward her. He seemed to see her anyway. You are the human who has raised them. We have heard stories. A soft creature with no claws who fights like a cornered beast, who stayed awake for 3 days to save the smallest cub from death, who stood alone against hollow scouts with nothing but fire and metal. Elena said nothing. There was nothing to say. The elder continued. We can take them now. We can raise them as proper Valoran. Teach them the old ways. Prepare them for the war against the Hollow. It is their birthright, their duty. Elena felt something cold grip her heart. She looked down at Thresh and Vora and Pip. They had grown so much. They were nearly adults by Valoran standards. Strong and fast and deadly. Perhaps they did belong with their own kind. But then Thresh stepped forward. His silver fur bristled. His teeth bared. He growled at the elders. No, he said, we do not go. Vora moved to stand beside him. Her golden eyes flashed with defiance. She is our pack mother. She bled for us. She fought for us. She did not abandon us when we were weak and useless. We will not abandon her now. Pip pressed against Elena's leg. He was still the smallest. But when he spoke, his voice was clear and strong. She is pack, he said in his broken human words. She is family. The elders stared. Silence filled the chamber. No Valoran had ever chosen an outsider over their own kind. It was unthinkable, impossible, and yet, the blind elder began to laugh. It was a deep rumbling sound that shook his scarred chest. You have done something remarkable, human, he said. You have given these children something we could not. We taught them to survive. You taught them to live. You taught them to love. He bowed his gray head before her. The other elders followed. In the old tongue there is a word for what you have become. Kelvoran, the one who holds the pack together. The heart that beats for all. Elena felt tears sting her eyes. She had not cried in years. Not since her daughter. But now the tears came freely. I just kept my promise, she whispered. The elder raised his head. His blind eyes seemed to shine. And that is why you are worthy of the name. You did not seek glory or reward. You simply loved 3 lost children who had no one else. That is the truest strength. The strength that does not break. The Valoran fleet offered repairs and supplies. They offered alliance and friendship. But most importantly, they offered respect. They had seen what Elena was. What humans could be. Not conquerors. Not warriors. Something far more dangerous. Parents who would burn the galaxy for their children. 2 years had passed since Elena found the cubs on that frozen moon. They were not cubs anymore. They were warriors. Thresh had grown into a massive creature of silver fur and rippling muscle. He stood taller than any human, and his claws could tear through starship armor. He had become a leader among the young Valoran. They looked to him for strength, and he gave it freely. Vora had become something even more dangerous. She was a tactician, a planner. Her quick mind saw patterns that others missed. She worked with the Valoran commanders to develop strategies against the Hollow. She was quiet and deadly and brilliant. Pip had grown too. He was still the smallest of the 3, but he had found his own strength. He was fast, faster than any Valoran alive, and he had a gift for reading others, for knowing when someone was afraid or hurt or lying. He had become a scout, a spy, a shadow that moved unseen. Elena watched them with pride that made her chest ache. They had become everything she had hoped for, and more, but pride was a luxury. The war was coming. The Hollow had been gathering for months. Scout swarms had been spotted across a dozen systems. Refugee ships had gone silent one by one. The surviving Valoran knew what it meant. The final battle was approaching. The swarm would come for them all. The War Council gathered on the largest Valoran vessel. Commanders and elders and warriors filled the chamber. Elena stood among them, the only human in a sea of wolves. The blind elder spoke first. His voice was heavy with sorrow. Our scouts have found the hollow core mind, the central intelligence that controls the swarm. It hides in a dead system 3 days from here. If we destroy it, the swarm will fall into chaos. But the defenses are massive. Many of us will die. The chamber murmured. Fear and determination mixed in equal measure. Then another elder turned to Elena. His eyes were kind but firm. Commander Vasquez, you and your crew have done more than we ever could have asked. But this is not your war. You are human. You have no stake in our survival. We ask that you leave now. Take your ship and go somewhere safe. Elena felt every eye in the room turn toward her. She felt the weight of the moment pressing down. She could leave. She could take her crew and fly away and never look back. The Valoran would understand. They would not blame her. She looked across the chamber. Thresh stood with the young warriors. Laura sat with the tacticians. Pip lurked in the shadows near the door. Her children. Her pack. She stepped forward. I made a promise 2 years ago, she said. A dying mother asked me to take care of her cubs. She said they could not survive alone. She was right. But she was also wrong. Elena turned to face the full council. Her voice grew stronger. They did not need me to help them survive. They needed me to show them why survival matters. To give them something worth fighting for. And I did. I gave them family. I gave them love. I gave them a reason to live beyond, just not dying. She raised her chin. That is what humans do. We stay. We fight for our pack. And you are my pack. All of you. Every scarred elder. Every frightened refugee. Every warrior who stands ready to die for their people. She pointed at the display showing the hollow core mind. I am not leaving. My crew is not leaving. We will fly beside you. We will fight beside you. And if we die, we will die as pack. Silence filled the chamber. Then Thresh stepped forward. His voice boomed. You heard her. The Calvaron has spoken. Let the hollow come. Let them face what happens when you threaten a human's family. The chamber erupted. Not in fear. In hope. The battle came 3 days later. It was everything the elders had warned and worse. The hollow swarm filled the space around the dead system like a living storm. Millions of creatures. Billions maybe. They threw themselves against the Valoran fleet with mindless hunger. The relentless hope flew at the heart of the formation. Elena commanded her damaged ship with the fury of a mother protecting her young. They pushed through the swarm. They broke through defenses. They cleared a path toward the core mind. But the cost was terrible. Ships fell around them. Friends died. The relentless hope took hit after hit. Alarms screamed. Fires burned. The hull groaned and buckled. They reached the core mind. Elena saw it through the shattered bridge window. A massive pulsing thing of flesh and metal. The brain of the swarm. The enemy of all thinking things. She armed the ship weapons. Everything they had left. It would be enough to destroy the core mind. But the ship was dying. Someone had to stay behind the fire. Elena turned to her crew. Get to the escape pods. All of you. Now. Commander Marcus started. That is an order, Elena said. Go. They went. All except Elena. She stayed at the helm. Her hands moved across the controls. She prepared to fire. The bridge door exploded inward. Thresh crashed through. His silver fur was burned and bloody. Behind him came Vora and Pip. "What are you doing?" Elena shouted. Thresh grabbed her. He was gentle, despite his strength. He lifted her and began to carry her toward the emergency pod. "You taught us to never abandon Pack Kelvoran," he growled. "Did you think we would let you die alone?" "But the core mind," Elena protested. Vora moved to the weapons console. Her claws flew across the controls. "I will fire," she said. "Then I will follow. Go." They reached the pod. Thresh threw Elena inside. Pip pressed against her. Vora fired the weapons, and then she ran. She was fast. So fast. She made it to the pod just as the core mind began to explode. The pod launched. Behind them, the relentless hope disappeared in the blast. Behind them, the hollow core mind died. Behind them, the swarm began to collapse. They had won. The aftermath was quiet. The Valoran mourned their dead. They celebrated their living. They began the long work of rebuilding. Elena stood on the observation deck of a Valoran ship. Her leg had been injured in the escape. She walked with a limp now. Her hair had more gray than before. But she was smiling. Thresh and Vora and Pip stood beside her. Full-grown, powerful, her children. Pip looked at her. His amber eyes were soft. "Do you regret it?" he asked. "Taking us in. Giving up your old life. Fighting a war that was not yours." Elena looked at them. Her strange, deadly, fiercely loyal pack. She thought of Kaura. Of the promise made in blood and snow. Of every sleepless night and every scar. She reached up and rested her hands on Pip and Thresh. Vora pressed close from the other side. "Not for a second," she said. The stars shone around them. The future stretched ahead. And somewhere in the void, a dying mother's spirit rested in peace. Her cubs were not alone. They never would be again.